Hello and welcome back to Why We Do It, the stories behind the stories in amateur sports. And this time we're going back to South Africa. This is, I think, the third guest from South Africa. Obviously, my roots, born and grew up to the age of 18 in South Africa, and delighted to have Kevin Smith, who is one of our, as I said, our third South African guest, but he's also my former PE teacher from Kearsley College, which we'll talk about in a second. Kevin, how are you?
I'm very well, Jim. Yourself?
I'm fantastic, and what a pleasure to have you on. And your story in terms of sport is long and distinguished, and I'm really looking forward to unpacking that. Obviously, as I just suggested, you and I first met each other when I was about 15 or 16, I think. You started a 30-year stint as the PE teacher at Kearsley College, which is shown in the middle of this picture. Obviously, that's a big area in KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa, and that's the Valley of 1,000 Hills off in the background there. But this ridge in the middle that stretches from the bottom of the picture right up through the middle, where the flat kind of green areas are, which are sports fields at the far end there. And you can see swimming pools and the gymnasium with a big orange roof on the left, and the boarding houses and the school buildings. And Kevin, you actually live just to the left of that top left sports pitch, which we've just been discussing offline, is where I actually lived for a little while. When I first was at school, my parents were living pretty much on the school grounds for just a few months. So great to have you on, and great to have you part of this. We're going to start your story, and this is about you and your own journey. But we're going to start a little bit in the middle, not right at the very beginning, with you telling us about being at Craven Week in 1974. So you can unpack the details of what Craven Week is for our international kind of folks not from South Africa, and how you ended up there, what you were doing, and how that all went, as was one of your main highlights in your sporting life.
Okay, so 1974 Craven Week. I think I'll have to go back to 1973. That was in Stellenbosch, Kutsenberg at the varsity there. So we all arrived there. I was the reserves come off that year, a massive 53 kilograms little runt. And thank goodness I didn't have to play all the games. It was...
Okay, so quickly, Kevin, before you get into that, who are you playing for, but what is Craven Week? Just explain that.
All right, Craven Week is an interprovincial schoolboy rugby tournament in South Africa. So all the schools in each province sent us aside there. In those days, we were from Rhodesia, now called Zimbabwe. We were always invited, and you had to play Western Province. In those days, Transvaal, Northern Transvaal, Free State, the Pumas, and now called Mpumalanga, the Pumas, and there were 20-odd sides. And they were always dominated. Listen, it's an Afrikaans-speaking thing. They are very, very hard rugby players. I think the reason, my personal feeling, why South Africa is rugby world champions is because of the Afrikaans hardness of those people, and having to play so many games in such a short time to get to the final. I mean, that last one we won 1 point. Had that been spread over a longer time, I think the things could have been different. The Afrikaans people, 1973, as I was saying, going back, Peter Kirsten was the Western Province fly-half. I think they chose Rhodesia, nice, soft little opening game. So we played the main game on the Monday at Kutsenberg, Stellenbosch, and Peter Kirsten was the fly there, and they just cut us apart. It was a heavy game. I was a reserve, so thank goodness I didn't even get on the field.
So who was that? Who are you playing with? Who are you playing against?
Western Province.
Right, okay, yeah.
Now called the Stormers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Same outfit. Then we lost that something like 24-6. Actually, no, I think a bit more, because Mark Springer scored a brilliant try from nowhere. And then we played the midweek game. We played what we called the Purple People Eaters, Northern Orange Free State. Now, they were tough mining guys, and it was like a shock to the system. The physicality, the brutality, the intensity was way above any first team schoolboy game that I've ever encountered. I just remember, actually, to put it mildly, shitting myself. Just dive past and tackle, and I came off there. I was like, yes, this was like a wake-up call that I wasn't expecting. And that, I think, helped me a hell of a lot in life, and especially for the next year, when I was then made vice captain of the Rhodesia side. And again, they picked us, nice, soft little English-speaking Rhodesian side, to play Northern Transvaal in the main game on the Tuesday. at Craven Week at Ellis Park. That's the main game in Johannesburg, main field in
Now known as the Blue Bulls, obviously, Northern
Correct.
Transvaal.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah.
And I
So
think they thought they were going to have an easy game. They put a couple of their reserves in. I remember we ran the ball from our own try line. We scored a try. David Smith and one of my other schoolmates he went on to play 4 games for the Springboks. He put over 2 drop kicks on the run. There's only 2 drop kicks ever. We tackled the hell out of them and managed to scrape home a 22-18, 22-19 win. So that was definitely my highlight of my schoolboy playing career.
So 22-19, this is the Rhodesian schools beating Northern Transvaal schools in 1974.
Correct.
And where was this then?
At Ellis Park, the main game, the main field in Johannesburg. They play all the test matches there. We'll be playing England next day, I think. I think that could be a great game too.
In July, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's fantastic. So take us back to primary school, growing up, and just how did you first discover sport, and what was it that kind of grabbed you and you thought, I'm going to just get into sport and do sport for it, basically pretty much the rest of my life?
I think it was part of our growing up. I was at a school called Hillside Junior School in Bulawayo, and we played mainly soccer and cricket. And then in our, we call it standard 5 year. So you were about 12 years old. Then we were allowed to play rugby. But the Afrikaans kids had already started a lot earlier. And I played sort of like B team there. Then I went to high school, Hamilton High School. And the first time I got hardings was on a cricket field. A coach called Bucky Buchanan. He had come up from the Eastern Cape. He was a short little guy. He had played Eastern Province cricket, rugby, and wrestling. He was our woodwork teacher, minus a couple of fingers through the bandsaw. And nobody really knew him. We didn't know him. So we're going to bowl, and I bowl one down the leg side. And he said, Smith, don't bowl down the leg side. Keep it on the offside. A couple of balls later, I made the same mistake. Bowled it down the leg side. Smith, come here, bend over. I thought he was joking. He took out a cricket stump and whacked me on the backside. Yes. I nearly cut myself. I never bowled down the leg side anymore. But he must have liked me or something, because he was also under 13 coach at rugby. And
so,
then we said,
Kevin, I have to interrupt, because you're talking about basically getting whacked, or as was known in when we were at school, and you were our teacher. So I'm coming to that. Getting jacked was what it was called. And what's very interesting, and because actually you featured on it, we're doing a separate podcast. Talking to guys that were in our final year, left school in 1986, or matric of 1986, and nearly every single person we've talked to on that podcast talks about getting jacked. Now, you were a teacher then, and actually you feature in one or two of the jack stories, but not too much. So talk about kind of gamekeeper turned poacher there. You remember being jacked on the sports field yourself. That's bizarre.
Yeah, but that was with a cricket stump, and it was bloody sore. I mean, I used to whack you oaks with a whistle whip. I mean, the end of a whistle. So if you didn't listen, you got a little whistle whip, which is nothing. It's just a touch, just to say, hey, listen, these are the railway lines. This is where you're going, and you stay on the railway lines. Don't get off the railway lines, because you're going to catch the whistle whip.
We're going to move on from this very quickly, but in one of those podcasts, there's a guy called Craig Zietzman. I don't remember him. He was in one of your rugby team. He was in one of your rugby teams when you first started at the school in 85, 86. So you started in 84. We'll come to that. And he bunked out basically, and he got caught, and he got 6 from the Dome. The Dome was the headmaster. So he got jacked 6. And that made him late to get to your bus to go to a rugby match. And he shows up at the bus. And you're saying to him, you're late, Zietzman, come here, I'm going to, and bend over, I'll get this cricket bat, or whatever it was, a handy kind of tool. And he says, oh, please, sir, I've just had 6 from the Dome. And you went, and you said apparently, oh, bloody hell, are you okay? Quick, get in the bus, let's go. And you let him off completely, thankfully.
Yeah, you see, I've got a soft side to me.
You have. So that was a stage and a time in life where that was pretty normal. Anyway, let's go back to school. You've just been jacked in the cricket, and I interrupted you. Tell us about your sports from there.
All right. Then he obviously is a small little guy, but he had played scrum half for Eastern Province, and then moved up to Rhodesia. He played Currie Cup as the scrum half for Rhodesia. And then he got hold of me. I bowled down the offside in the cricket season, but he's also a rugby coach. He said, come here, you've got to learn to dive pass. Now, Bulawayo is not like Thursday with like a soft fields and grass. it's a red volcanic earth with little paper thorns all over the place. But
Oh,
he made me
lovely.
dive pass only. So I had a dive pass, and I wasn't allowed to do a standing pass, and I had a tackle. That's all I was allowed to do. I wasn't allowed to kick, and I wasn't allowed to do a stand-up pass. And I remember the cricket, I definitely didn't want to get that cricket stump again. So that's how it started. So then sort of 13A, 14A, 15A, off we went. Then we went to an open age group. I played
So
thirds.
sorry, can I jump in again quickly? What happened to the dive pass? No one does a dive pass anymore. I remember that being a thing when I was a kid. So I don't know. I guess I'm maybe 10 years younger than you. And I remember that watching sport when I guess you were playing at that level you've just been talking about. I was a young kid. The dive pass was all the rage. Whatever happened to it? It's gone completely.
Well, especially nowadays. Nowadays they call it the scrum half wears the red jersey. You can't touch him. I mean, my day you'd offside line at the scrum was the ball. Now the scrum half can't go near the other scrum half. He's got to stand at the entrance of the tunnel, so you can't catch the other
So
scrum
that's
half.
why you were getting away from the kind of the tackler. You're
Yes.
diving to get away. Now you don't have to
Correct.
do that because there's no one
Yeah.
breathing down your neck. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Back to your kind of end of school stuff.
No problem. Then I made first team 1972. Phil Ratcliffe, you might remember, your maths
Yes.
teacher,
Yep.
was my rugby coach. Him and a guy called Derek Van Zyl. We went on a rugby tour to the Eastern Cape. Down there we played
So this
Hudson
is your
Park.
school team, your school first team. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Hudson Park, then Muir College at Uitenhage and Grey PE at Grey. What was interesting there, the rugby was quite nice. It wasn't as heavy and eye-opening and frightful as those Craven Week games. But we got down there, and in Rhodesia, all our trees are lovely green straight. But you get down to the Eastern Cape, and these trees are all growing sideways. So you think, what the hell's going on here? And then we found out what goes on there. That if you take a 22, can't kick it like we used to kick it if you're playing into the wind, because we ended up having a 5-meter scrum with our first 22 because the wind blows like hell.
Yeah.
And when you're playing with the wind, they just kick it in the middle and it'll run like hell. So that was different conditions. We won the Lawson Brown game. I think we just lost the Muir College game with the wind, and Grey PE gave us a bit of a hiding. But that whole thing down on the train, touring, and I think from that, and they also took us in 1974, the same two teachers took us down to Durban on a rugby tour. Also by train, we played Glenwood, Peter Tech, what's it called, Alex, Westville, and then Maritzburg College gave us a big hiding. But in those days, so I'd like to clarify this, because in those days, they had a guy called Pip Anderson, was the tight head prop. He was the captain. He came and met us on the train. I called him Sir, because I thought he looked like he had a beard on him, never mind just a morning growth. And then Phil Ratcliffe gets off, and I hear him talking in the background, and he says to him, "What subject do you teach?" And he says, "No, sir, I'm just the captain." So later on that afternoon, when we shook hands and we had the toss, and I looked at him, I'd called him Sir. But he was 21 years old that year. Skong Nicholson used to keep his players back, and they had his 21st in the school hall, and they gave him a cigarette lighter.
At
The loose head
21st,
prop
and he's
was
still at school.
Yeah. I mean, our front row was all 17-year-olds. He's 21. That's 4 years difference. No wonder they murdered us.
That's a big one. So we're going to talk later on about you being a selector for the South African schools rugby team and rugby kind of setup later down in the story. But you're mentioning a lot of schools there that you've now played against in your final year at school. And some of those schools, I mean, people in South Africa will recognize many of them. And maybe even people outside South Africa, if they followed some of the names of the big South African players and where they went to school. But Maritzburg College, you mentioned, Grey College, these are big, powerful rugby playing kind of factories, aren't they? Certainly in those days as well.
You got to just get it right. Grey College and Grey High School. Grey College is in Bloemfontein.
Right.
We didn't play them, but Grey High School in Port Elizabeth, we did play them.
Okay,
Grey
so
Bloem
two great, yeah.
is the equivalent to a provincial side, Craven Week side. I mean, they
Yeah.
year in and year out will have 90% of the Craven Week side come from Grey Bloem.
So you rather play the Grey High rather than the Grey Bloem.
For sure.
But you played Maritzburg College, and they're up there, aren't they? They're a bit of a sports machine.
They went through a hell of a run in the 70s and 80s. They're not as strong these days as they were, but they they used to keep the boys back like old Pip Anderson and them. But yeah, they've produced many Springboks. They're a great rugby school. They're still very good, but it's equalised out now. You're sort of DHS are very strong. Westville is strong. Northwood have come up, and then you got your private schools, Hilton, Michaelas, and ourselves, Kersney, reasonable. But there's some good playing. But when you got to take that into perspective, is that Craven Week this year, I think, is 60 years if you take the 2 COVID years out of it. In all of those 60 years, the Natal school side have only ever won 3 out of 3 on 4 occasions. I mean, the Western Province side has now won 18 out of the last 18. They're unbeaten they've not only unbeaten, they haven't drawn one. They've won every game for the last 6 Craven Weeks. And they're a hell of a powerful. You got those 2 pole sides, Paul Jim, Paul boys. And even nowadays, you got up-and-coming schools like Stellenberg beating Paul Jim. Yes. That's a frightening schoolboy outfit down in the Western Cape there.
So we're going to come back because I want to talk about Maritzburg College one more time, but there's so many thoughts running here, one of which is it's really interesting to hear this, particularly if you're listening to this podcast from outside South Africa. If you're in the UK, particularly a lot of the folks that I'm in touch with and that are involved in this podcast and have been on it or listened to it are Scottish. And it's just really interesting that if you wonder why South Africa is so dominant in rugby, you hear what Kevin is saying here about this machine, all of these schools and all of these provincial kind of teams at school level creating this Craven Week tournament where all these provincial school teams play each other to form the South African school team. And you compare that to Scotland. And the fact that actually Scotland produces an international team that can, despite not having almost any of that, schoolboy rugby is very kind of there's a bit in Edinburgh and there's a bit of Glasgow and maybe Aberdeen, but there's a handful of schools that are serious rugby schools in Scotland. Very, very few. But Scotland still, I say we because I wear both hats, Scotland and South Africa. Scotland still produces a team that from time to time, as we just saw against France a few weeks ago, can actually show up and produce a result. But you can see and hear this machine that is the South African system. And it's hardly surprising that they've won 2 World Cups now and are looking at maybe hoping for a third. Anyway, Kevin, take us back. Maritzburg College. When I was at school, 85, 86, you were my teacher. As we said, up the road in Maritzburg College, Joel Skransky is playing fly half for Maritzburg College against us. And I'm sure rugby aficionados will know or remember Joel Skransky kicking the drop kick to win the World Cup in 1995, the Nelson Mandela 1995 tournament. So, he was up the road at Maritzburg College. So this is the kind of caliber of people that are knocking around in this environment. So, Kevin, I think we're still at school. So anything else at school before you move on to university?
Just thinking, we actually talk about Scotland. Scotland came and toured Rhodesia. I think it wasn't a full-out Scotland side. I think it was the private school Scotland side. They called themselves the Thistles. They came over to Rhodesia. They played our provincial sides, Matabeleland, which is the area around Bulawayo, Midlands, Mashonaland. And then we got flown, or we went up by train, I think, to now Harare, Salisbury. And we played them at the main ground, the Salisbury police ground there. Then they came to Natal. They won. They beat all of us up there. We had close games against our Matabeleland side when they first arrived, but they were quite a good outfit. So we had lost all of the games there. I lost my provincial game and the national game. We were close in the provincial side, but then they came down to Natal. They played Natal that year. And from what I can hear, I don't know, but I think they're talking to Rob Blamey was the chairman at Kersney. And I mentioned that to him. He said, they came down. We played them. He was chairman of Natal Schools. And Natal Schools beat them quite easily. So we did have a Scottish connection.
Do you remember any names from that Scotland setup? Were the Hastings brothers and people like that involved?
Oh, no. This is, I think, even before them.
Before them,
would have been
right.
Before
Okay.
them, yeah. No.
Right, okay. Good. So you finish up at school, I think, sports-wise, and you go off to university down in South Africa.
Well, I wanted to, but we weren't allowed to. We had to go to the army.
Oh, so there's a bit in between, yeah.
You applied to go to university, not army, but if you put down you're going outside the country, they said no. If you were going to university, then called University of Rhodesia, now called University of Zimbabwe, then they allowed you because they had you in the country. So I was going to Rhodes University in Grahamstown. But what happened with me there, the week before we went in, I was at a rugby practice and broke my leg. I'm doing a stupid drill. And
Dive passing.
no,
Dive passing.
no. It was running around in a circle and run to get a ball in the middle. And typical scrum half, trying to be a cheeky bugger. I tried to dribble and kick the ball away from the other guy, and he dived and I kicked, and clack, the knee went broken. So when I went into the army, they said, no, we're going to TMU you. So I said, what do you mean? A temporary medically unfit. I said, not the hell. I'm not wasting another year waiting around and coming. I'm going to varsity. So I hobbled around in the army for the first, must have been 8 weeks on crutches with a plaster, and then trying to keep up with everybody. The bone didn't set right, so the surgeon re-broke it and put a spin in it. When I finally came out, my one left leg was like a twig compared to my other leg. Tried to play a bit of Llewellyn club rugby at the end, but then went to Rhodes University, Grahamstown, and then I played under 20 for them for the year. In my second year, I played second team Rhodes. Went into a digs then, but in my third and fourth year, I stooged at Kingswood College in Grahamstown. And one of the deals there that, well, we were on bursaries and grants and loans and everything, is that I couldn't play sport for the varsity because you had to coach and drive and take the Kingswood kids alone. So I didn't do much sport at all in my third and fourth year. I coached the Kingswood rugby and cricket sides and drove buses all over. We were called stooges, or they're called border masters now. But you lived for free, and that when the school was open, had free meals, and so you had a bit of pocket money, and then you just paid for your varsity. So it was also a good experience.
So you were kind of, it's like work experience whilst you. So you were doing,
Correct.
you were studying PE at uni, I guess.
Correct. Yeah, phys ed and geography were my two majors.
Right. So the amazing thing is, I'd never went to Rhodes, but because I moved to the UK the day after I left Kersney, but I had a acceptance letter to study PE at Rhodes University in Grahamstown. So I was on the path following you, but yeah, the whole world turned on its head, and I ended up in the UK instead. So you're at uni, you're doing kind of work on the side, kind of work experience with these schools, and how does things develop from there?
I think that was very useful. It was hell of a helpful because then I had to go back and it was the end of the Bush War. So I had to go, and a lot of guys at that stage said, no, we signed under the Rhodesian government. It was just when Mugabe got into power, April 1980. But I didn't really know what to do anyway. And we had owed this money and you had to have 2 years service back to the government. So I went back and they post you there to school. So you apply for an area and then they tell you where to go. And I got posted to a small little school in the Gweru now. They call it Thornhill High School. And at that stage, a lot of elderly teachers and that left the country. And we were walked in and we did first team rugby, first team cricket, in charge of gymnastics, athletics. So you were just jumped in and you got stuck in.
Straight in, yeah.
I organised a tour back down from the Midlands, Gwillow, to the Eastern Cape because I knew, having done my Kingswood things with my school there, and we played Dale and Queens in there, but I knew the standard. I mean, I don't know if you talked about Cravenwick and the standard there. That triangular Dale, Queens, Selborne is frightening as well. I did my teaching prac at Dale, and when they're going to have a game in between one of those three sides, the Friday, people in England won't understand it. They won't believe it. As the bell goes, the whole school is shouting the war cry in between passages, classrooms. You can't teach. You can forget teaching. It's mayhem. And on the field, it's war. It's absolute war. Now you won't believe it until you actually see it. That Eastern Cape one is crazy. So you talk about the strong Western Cape schools, and now all of those schools are still playing excellent rugby. Dale and Queens in particular now, and a lot of those guys are a majority of Xhosa speakers or Black Indigenous South Africans. Very few whites left in those two sides. Selborne, there's still quite a few, but Selborne is most probably of late the weakest out of those three. It's still very, very hard, aggressive rugby. Mm-hmm. But the point I'm trying to make with those three is how do I word it for the people across there? They won't understand it. They go mad. They go moggy. It's like war. It is absolutely like war.
And that's on and off the field. Yeah.
Correct. Once the game's over, you shake hands and that's it. But
it's
you
all
won't
good.
believe it into the war cries and the intensity and the ferocity is frightening.
This is a very strange thing to ask, but when you said it, it's cropped into my mind. But ha, the logistics of taking a school trip from northern Rhodesia to the Eastern Cape. Do you drive that or do you fly? I mean, how the hell do you get there?
What happened there? Like in South Africa now, you got code 10 license to get a big bus license. There we had what we called in Zimbabwe at the time. It's called an omnibus license. So I went and got my omnibus license on the Friday afternoon. We took the school 20-seater old Madala. Madala means old vehicle. We took out the seats, put on a whole lot of mattresses and blankets and sleeping bags, and off we went. I arranged a game in Bloemfontein, St. Andrew's School, and then down to the Eastern Cape. And we played Dale's second team, Queen's second team, because I knew the standard would be way above my kids from Thornhill. Thornhill was a small school. And then we played Graham College first team. Graham College has come up nasty in rugby. Actually, it's a small world because I organised them a rugby tour. So with my UK mates that I had contacts with, I did quite a lot of organising tours for guys to go overseas and use them. And so I did a rugby tour for Graham College, but we had played them. And at the end of the game, I said to the ref, "What's the score?" And he said, "I don't know. I haven't kept it." So I think it was a draw. But the guys at the scoreboard didn't know that we had played this game of rugby, and nobody actually knew perfectly if it was a draw or a win or a lose. So I didn't keep the score either, which is rather stupid of me. But,
just to go back and then move on, driving from Northern Rhodesia to Bloemfontein and then to the Eastern Cape, just for the people who don't know that, it is a unbelievably long way. That must have taken absolute ages. That's why I was asking, did you fly or drive? Because that's incredibly
Then we get to the border, and one of our kids, I think his name is Willie Swartz, said, "Grant, bring me all your passports." I told him about passports, and most Zimbabwe Rhodesians had passports. He didn't have one. And they counted the number, and they found out, and so he had to go back. So he hitchhiked back, got his passport on his own. He's just a schoolboy. And then we're playing St. Andrews in Bloemfontein, and there he pitches up at the school in Bloemfontein. I said, "Where the hell have you come?" He said, "No, he hitchhiked. He's got his passport. He came through and he caught up with us."
And he hitchhiked back. Oh my God, that's incredible. That is absolutely unbelievable.
And going back a little bit of time, back to schoolboy days, I mean, we were allowed to get our driver's license at 16. We drove a 17-year-old in a bakkie, 5 of us, from Bulawayo to Harare, now Salisbury, to Mutare, then up to Byron. And we camped on the beach for 2 weeks, all on our own. And we used to go and live in like the Matopas as a national park. As 14, 15-year-olds, the folks would take you out there, drop you off, set up a camp. We would go and camp all on our own in the bushes and make rafts and fish. Always get bilharzia. We were told never to swim in the dams, and we always ended up swimming in the dams, getting bilharzia. Take your pills because you get blood in your urine. And I mean, the things that we grew up with, you never get that growing up today. And the prices were ridiculous.
You don't get that growing up in the UK, and there people is what growing up in Africa was like back in the 70s and 80s. That's unbelievable. Time is absolutely flying, Kevin, and we got a lot to talk about. So let's jump forward. You did you do anything else then before you ended up at Kearsley in 1984?
Well, teaching at Thornhill High School, I got right back into the rugby. I said, "No, I can't play rugby." I had two knee ops after my broken leg. The cartilage is taken out, but they wouldn't accept that, and so I had to go and play for the provincial side, Midlands. And we played in the black and white tournament. We played against Kenya. We played against Russia. And then a side called Leicester. Now, we didn't realize at the time. They had a guy called Youngsy. Now, the guy who's playing for England now, Youngsy, who's got the most caps, it was his father. So I'm playing against him. No, he's playing for England. He's a British Lion. And I'm like, school teacher that hasn't played or practiced for too long. But I break blind and he's not there. And I catch him at the back. I think, he's not so good. Then he caught me. And all I heard was my knee go.
Oh, no.
That game. And the game's got so physical now. I mean, I've had my second right knee replacement just 3 months ago. But both knees are replaced. The physicality of the game today compared to that, I mean, I played first team schoolboy rugby for 3 years, Creighton Week for 2 years. Today, I don't think I'd make anybody second team. The kids have got to be so prepared now physically, especially if you're playing a big schoolboy rugby. It's not like an idea where it was seasonal. You pitch up, you have 2 practices a week, play on a Saturday, and it's for fun. Now, it's physical. It's hard.
Full time now. Yeah. So excellent. And then you then follow up with an old pal? You said he was your teacher before, Phil Ratcliffe, who's now teaching at Kearsney College. And
he's finished off. He's retired now, but he sort of
but at the time
inherited in me the values of touring. Touring, it's a great way. Like besides playing in trees that bend sideways, or up against 21-year-olds, or up against these Afrikaner, I call them kamikaze pilots with a religion. They will die for the cause, and God gave them the right to smoke the soties. And if I used to say to the coaches at Craig Week there, hey, no CC team talk. They all knew me as SS, Sach Soti. And then we won some games, and they were Slim Soti. You know what I mean? It was an idle chatter. And then they said, what do you mean? That means, what are you saying, CC team talk? I said, concentration camp team talk. No concentration camp team talks at halftime. And what they used to do is, if you're beating the Afrikaans kids at halftime, the coach goes to their kids and says, those uncles and grandfathers, put all your grandmothers and your aunties and would have been your cousins, and they killed them in concentration camp. What are you going to do about it? Yes. Then they come out, and now they are not smoking hot. They are firebrand. Yeah. So anyway, you just take it on the chin. If you've beaten Afrikaans side at rugby, you've done bloody well.
Yeah. Wow. That is, and I mean, I didn't get exposed to that very much. I didn't get into those kinds of tours playing rugby myself, but yeah, I understand, and actually I did. I think I followed most of what you said, but I think a few of our UK followers will be like, "What was he just talking about there?" That's crazy. So I've tried twice. I'm going to now bring it directly. So eventually you arrive at Kearsney. So you come to Kearsney in 1984. You're there for 30 years. That's a big block of your whole kind of sporting, kind of coaching, teaching life. I don't know if you played much sport yourself during that, but talk us through your Kearsney years, the 30-odd years that you were there.
Okay, well, at the interview, Colin Silcock was the headmaster, and he said to me, it's hard for the size, the private school, Kearsney, I think we were 450-odd boys. Now it's 625-odd. But it's a numbers game, he said to me. And when you're playing Maritzburg College, DHS, Glenwood, Westfield, Northwood, they're big schools. So what he wanted was, can I coach gymnastics? I said, yeah, but I coach rugby as well. He said, no. You can help with the rugby. You're not interested in that. He wanted a gymnastics team and a choir, so you could try and put Kearsney on the map in some sort of way. You know what I mean? So I said, yeah, well, I'm coaching gym teams in Zim. And we're number 2 in the country, Thornhill, small little school, but they'd had a gymnastics program going for a long time. Neil Natterville started that. They're a good gymnastics school. I just try to keep it going. I'd coached it. Gymnastics is a discipline, Jim. It's not like rugby, cricket, where it's a seasonal thing. Gymnastics is 4 days a week, Friday off for golf, of course. 4 days a week, 4 terms a year. And after 4 years of dogged training, fitness, drills, high bar, P-bar, rings, pommel, vault, floor, you get somewhere. You know what I mean? It's not easy. It's a discipline. It's hard work. So we did quite well with the gymnastics. I think my last year, I was coaching the Natal junior gym team, and you had 5 grades. Grade 5 was the lowest, the 4-3-2-1 was the highest. And in the grade 1 of that year, there were 4 guys in the Natal gym team. 3 were from Kearsney. Bogart, Butler, Conrad, Clifford, and Malcolm Giles. So we had done pretty well, but it took a lot of hard work. I think that was in about the 6th or 7th year.
Yeah, so what year was that, like early 90s?
Well, 1990, because 1991 I started the first team. So it was 89, 90. 88, they were good. 88, from 88, 89, 90, 88, 89, 90.
I recognize a couple of those names because I was in charge as a prefect of the junior house in 1986. So those guys would have been kind of youngsters, probably 86 time frame. Right. So I do recognize a couple of the names there. But you arrived at school 84. You started the gymnastics kind of pretty soon. My younger brothers were in your gymnastics team right at the very beginning, along with John Rousseau, who was in my year, and my youngest brother Rob tells a story after I spoke to you kind of last time on the other podcast. About you dislocating your thumb. Apparently he seems to remember you dislocating your thumb because he did a somersault and he bounced off the trampoline, and then you went to push him back on and you did something to your thumb. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, it does. I've been forgotten about things like that. Yes, no, it does ring a bell.
So it would have been 85 or 86. Yeah, you
Correct,
pushed him
yeah.
back on when he came flying off and hurt yourself. So
Excuse me.
just par for the course, kind of getting injured yourself, trying to
John
protect these
Rousseau
guys.
ended up a good gymnast as well. I think he
Yeah.
got to grade 1, but he was very good, very agile, determined, hard work. We put in the new equipment. And what I remember about him, and it was my fault with the high bar, and they hadn't glued in the high bar pivots properly. And the whole bloody thing came loose, and he's trying to teach him giant circles on
Jeez.
the high bar, and the whole
Wow.
thing bolted out the ground, and me, and the bars flew. How the hell we didn't break a neck or anything? So John Rousseau, I apologize to you.
Okay. Well, while we're on the subject of calamities, we touched on this last time we spoke, and actually, very, very weirdly, because I'm doing these other podcasts with guys from my year at school, this afternoon, I mean, a few hours' time, I'm doing another podcast recording, and I'm talking to John Woodburn, bizarrely. I mean, this has been going for a few months, and I'm talking to John Woodburn this afternoon. And you will remember John Woodburn from the javelin down the slope story. So why don't you tell us the two javelin stories, but starting with John Woodburn, seeing as I'm going to be talking to him today.
That's not odd. Yeah, he had taken the javelin and then thrown it and pegged it in the ground, but then it was a slope going down onto the first team cricket field, but then slipped and the back end of the javelin went straight into it. So yeah, that wasn't nice. But the worst one,
yeah, hang on, we'll get to the worst one in a second, because I know this is a worse story, but this is pretty bad. We wanted to short this story. John's running down the slope, and then it's quite a steep slope. It's not like just a gentle; it's a really steep slope. You couldn't walk it; you would have to run it just to keep yourself upright, and then use the flat to slow down. And he's running down the slope, and he threw the javelin down onto the field as he was going down to practice javelin, and it pegs in, as you say, and he can't stop himself running down the hill. He's got all this momentum, and he runs onto the back of the javelin, straight through him, pretty much. I mean, and we'll hear in the other podcast later. If you follow both our podcasts, people, you'll hear the other sort of version of him telling his version of running onto the javelins. But you've got another javelin story as well.
No, that was later. On sports day. So up early, I'd put out all the equipment, and then the staff hadn't arrived yet. But one guy, I don't know if I should mention names or anything.
No, probably not if it's not good. Yeah.
Well, he decided he was going to have a practice throw. Now, I'll put out all the equipment, the shot put, the discus, the javelins, the high jump mats, the bars and all of that. And then I see this kid run up and I said, shot it. Hey, no. And he threw practice throw. But in the middle, I can't remember the kid's name. He was walking across the javelin area. And I saw it all happen. And the javelin hit him straight in the chest. And I just went absolutely white. I thought, oh, my God. And I saw him pull the javelin out of his chest like this and throw it down. And he collapsed. And we all just ran. Ambulance came, put him on, and how the hell, we were so lucky there. You can't believe it. The surgeon who did him, I think his name was Kleinloch, is also a Kersney parent. He said the javelin had touched the heart and moved it sideways. Had it nicked it or anything, he'd be stone dead. So now we had a big palaver whether we cancelled javelin or not, but now they put it on the other field and discus. So they don't have javelin or discus on the main oval, the first team cricket oval. They have it on the Stott, at least on Madison and Oslo, but miles apart. So the javelin's done down there by the Greyhound. And the
javelin as a sport, international javelin sport hasn't changed that much. You still have someone throwing into a field and you have people running around measuring and collecting javelins. So I wonder how many other...
It's not as concentrated as it was on the cricket
on all on the same pitch. Yeah, because we did everything in the same place on the same day. Yeah.
That was not nice.
So talk us through being a PE teacher and how things changed over 30 years at Kersney. I mean, you've seen a lot, haven't you? You've been through so much. I mean, you've seen some big names of people come through, play international rugby. You've seen other people go on to lots of other kind of high levels of sport in general. And you've seen the whole concept of teaching PE as a subject change dramatically. I mean, I don't know how you summarize that all down, but what are your what's your overview thoughts of how things developed and changed and as you went through?
Okay, Colin Silcock said, okay, he got the job, and then he came back to me. He said, it's quite a busy timetable. He wasn't kidding. There was no free periods from Monday to Friday, and then Saturday morning, you guys used to have 4 teaching periods. So I had, before the cycle tests came in on a Saturday morning. So my 4 free periods in the whole week was Saturday morning. But then you had cricket or rugby or whatever the
Straight
season was
into all-day
after
sport,
that.
yeah.
And then I double coached gymnastics from 2 o'clock when you guys would have said rest. I said to Colin Silkle, you got to have rest. What's rest? We didn't have rest nowadays. So when you guys went and lay on your bed and that, we did gymnastics from 2 to 3:30. And then 3:30, I went onto the fields, and depends if it's rugby, cricket, or athletic season, then I coached there. So it was quite a busy life for the first 10 odd years.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first year athletics meetings was a bit disastrous. The triangular, I remember up at Michael House, it was 2 athletes per event, and you only got points for first, second, third. So if you came 4-5 or 5-6 or 4-6, you got 0 points. And Hilton won it on like about 120 points. Michael House was second, 110, and we got 20. So Colin Silcock says to me in the after drinks afterwards, he says, do you think you deserve that beer? I'm having a beer there now. So on Monday morning, I'm making an appointment with the secretary. I said, I'd like to see Mr. Silcock, please. So I go and I say to him, no, listen, I don't appreciate your comment about me. He said, well, what have you done? I said, I'm not in charge of athletics. You said I'm in charge of physical education. I teach 460 boys, all the disciplines, not the 35 at the athletics track. So then he comes to me a couple of weeks later and he says, all right, the person, the teacher who's in charge of athletics is leaving. You're going to take over, and I want a plan in 2 weeks. What are you going to do about it? So 2 weeks' time, I go back to him. I say, okay, the phys ed program, and I think we went through that with you, all measured in competition, and that's where you got the only Kersney kid ever to get 100% for diving, 2.5 somersault face first in the water. I remember it so well when you mentioned that.
So for those people who aren't part of the school and haven't followed this, very briefly, and I've got another thing personally to show you in a second now that you talk about athletics. But Kevin introduced a scoring system where in 3 different forms of sport, water, athletics, and other general sports, he scored us all in every class. And we all got a percentage for every single kind of sport that he was judging. And it was all kind of very kind of competitive. But when it came to diving, springboard diving, I looked at the list and there was 100 points available, 100% available if you did a 2.5 somersault off the 1 meter board. I'd never done that before. I'd never done it since. And I thought, if there's 100% up here, I'm going for it. So I launched myself into it. I was still in the tuck when I landed face first into the water. And Kevin kindly said, well, you were face first, even though you were in the tuck. So we'll give you the half. That's 2.5 somersaults, tick, 100 points. But 5 minutes later, I was in the English class, because this is school time. And my face is all swollen, my eyes are puffed up, and the teacher's saying, "What happened to you? You've been in a fight?" I was like, "No, I just was doing diving with Kev Smith."
You still hold the record. The only Kersney boy ever to get 100% for diving, 2.5 forward, and you landed it. So well done.
There should be a plaque. There should be a plaque next to the pool. I'm gonna go get a plaque put up next to the pool there for that. Yeah. But back to athletics. Well, what year were you talking about that you took over?
So 84, we got a Harding. So then 85, I took over. And what I did, I said, okay, the phys ed program stays the same, but then what we're going to do is we're going to start off the first Saturday of the athletic season in the third term. So you still played a couple of games of rugby, and then you went on to athletics. Now it's all soccer now. It's all changed completely now. And I said, what we're going to do is we're going to start with the standards competition. So each boy will be allowed to get a standard. It'll be an in-mass program, a bit disorganized. You'll do it by class with a clipboard. And I'll have staff at each thing. You have 1 attempt. And if you're there and you can do the low standard, was a 1, then they 3 standard, or if you're good, you get a 5 standard. And then we'll add up for the house, and there'll be a cup for the overall standards. I said, then during the week, what we're going to do, and I've asked some staff if they'll help us, and those who not coaching will be doing the officiating. So on a Monday and Wednesday, it's coaching for anybody who wants to do, and I had various staff at each one of the events. And if the kids wanted to get into the school team, they went to get coached. And then according to their performances, they got into the school team for inter-schools. So I did the long and middle with you guys. Mr. Sunning, I think, did the hurdles. Mr. Garrett did the javelin. Mr. King did the triple and long jump, that type of thing. Mr. Decker shared it with Mr. Dedricks and shot put.
So you were talking about 84 starting, and the
85. They would have started 85.
All right, the triangular.
Tuesday, Thursday, it was the relays meeting. So you had the top 6 per house per event. And so on a Tuesday and on a Thursday, you'd have 1 field event and 1 track event. So each House had to put in an under 13, 14, 15, 16, 6 guys. So from the phys ed covered the whole school. The standards, each guy had a chance of getting standard points for his house. And then we had those relay meetings midweek on the Tuesday, Thursday, and coaching for anybody interested, wanting to get better on the Monday, Wednesday. Then we picked inter-schools team to go to Pinetown for the octangular, and then to the excuse me, to the D&D meetings. And it took 5 years, but we won. I think it was 89. We won that triangular meeting at Kersney.
Right. No, I'm gonna challenge you on the detail there for a second, because this is the 1986 full school team. You and I are sitting next to each other in this picture. I'm in the middle. I'm in the middle because in 1986 I was flattered and honored to be asked to be captain of the school athletics team. There's you and is it Lees, Mrs. Lees? Is it Anne Lees?
Yes, yes.
She's a former British Commonwealth hurdler who moved out to the UK, to South Africa, and was teaching with her husband, Morris, was it? Morris Lees?
Correct. I went to New Zealand.
So this is 1986. I'm the captain. You're running the team there next to me. And I can tell you for a fact that in 86, we won the triangular tournament against Hilton and Michaelhouse, because I remember that we got absolutely pummeled against Hilton and Michaelhouse on the year before in 85.
85, correct.
Yeah, and then I ended up being captain. The triangular is
coming to 86.
The triangular came to Kersney. It was at Kersney on the Monday after Sports Day. And because I was captain, I had to make a speech on Sports Day during prize giving. And I remember saying at the end of my speech, okay, guys, I'm talking to all the school, all the parents, all the staff, everyone's listening. And I remember saying, right, so this is Saturday. Monday, we've got the triangular athletic meet against Hilton and Michaelhouse. We got absolutely pummeled last year. So let's go out there and do our best, and hopefully it won't be so bad.
No,
hopefully we'll just hang on.
Done.
And we won it. We won it on that Monday. We beat them. And I was in the last race, which was a medley relay. And I ran the 800 meters. And I was telling the story in another podcast just yesterday to one of the guys who was in that team. And in the last race, there was a 200 meter, there was a 400 meter, 200 meter, 200 meter, 800. And I did the 800 leg. And the baton arrived, all three batons arrived at the same time. So it was a straight shootout between me, Hilton, and Michaelhouse. 3 guys, 3 batons, 800 meters go. And we'd already won. All we had to do, the tournament, we'd won the whole day. All we had to do was finish that race and come third without being disqualified. And I was goosed. I'd already run like the 3,000, 1,500. I'd done an individual 800. This is my 4th race. And I just didn't have the gas. And these guys left me. And I had to run 2 laps, basically all on my own, while they sprinted off ahead. But all I had to do was get the baton across the line, and we won the day. We won the overall. So, yes, we won in 86.
Won in 86. Well, good memory. I stand corrected. That's brilliant.
Well, I only had 1 year. You had 30, so it's easy.
We got a hiding the year before. Remember that. I see Squeegee sitting next to Anne Lees as well there.
Yeah. So that's Nkululeko Squeer. Interesting story about him. He was an incredibly fast runner. He played first team rugby. And you may remember this. In 1987, the year after this, I was in the UK. I heard stories third hand that he made Natal Schools athletics, but he was not allowed to travel. The kind of South African schools kind of athletics tournament was going to be in Pretoria. And obviously because he's black, they said, no, he can't travel. And a few of the other guys in this picture who were also in that team, Mark Jewett's in this picture, he was in that team. They all apparently boycotted and said, if Squeegee or Nkululeko Squeer is not going, we're not going. Do you remember that?
Yes, I remember. I was in charge that year, D&D. It's called D&D Athletics. So we didn't have much to do with Pietermaritzburg, but we had Durban and districts. And we picked a side, and they go up to, it was called Menlo Park. So this is our strong Menlo Park. They had individual schools racing against our whole Durban and district schools. So we weren't just, we were a team, but lots of schools, not just one school, up against a whole lot of schools. And he would have been like the first black guy. And when he got there, they said, no, he can't compete. He's black. So they phoned me and they said, what you going to do? So what do the kids feel like? And they said, no, if he can't go, we don't want to come. So I said, fine, get on the bus and come home. So they did. So
fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
It was a heated time.
So there's Kersney at this stage. This is during apartheid. For those people who are not familiar with all the timings in South Africa, so 86. This is during apartheid. Kearsley was a mixed race school because it was a private school, unlike state schools. But there weren't many non-white folks who could afford it, I guess, or were in a position to send their kids to Kearsley. And the only other non-white face in here, I think, looking at it, is in the second row with glasses on, smiling away, is a guy called Etienne Finn. He was probably 13 at the time, and he goes on to play rugby for South Africa in the end and become a full Springbok. So you know Etienne pretty well, don't you?
Let me tell that story. So he was a year too young for his class, under 12 in actual fact. I was the under 13A rugby coach. So I had him for 2 years. The second year, he was my captain. So he comes to the first practice and he's a bit overweight and chubby-ish. I said, come here, you're going to be tight head prop. And he says, no, sir, no, I play soccer. I said, there's no soccer at this school. Come here. So I chuck his head in the scrumming machine on the tight head prop. I said, this is your life. It's going to be your life. And he pulls his head out.
Right.
Says, no, sir, no, sir, I don't like it. But you talk about whacking. So when he was my captain the second year, he's captain that under 13A side. So he used to always be there first, always ready. And then he used to go and give me a stick. So I used to be fit enough to chase the kids during shadow and whack them on the bum if they're not quick enough. So he used to come out and go and get me my stick. And they say, sir, is this good enough for today's practice? Yeah, well done, Finn. That's nice. Let's go. Then, I think it was last year. It was last year. Freddie Cox was also his first team coach and Craven Week coach. And he left Natal and he's gone up and got a job coaching one of the private schools in Pretoria area. And he very kindly had a farewell. And he asked Freddie Cox and myself to go along. So Freddie and I went down to his farewell luncheon down at the golf course in Durban Country Club. So he remembered us from all of those days. Good old Etienne Finn.
Brilliant,
yeah,
brilliant.
Played all the way through, played Natal schools, played SA schools, I think, or he was in the academy side that beat SA schools. Matt Stevens was the same, also a tight head prop that captained the academy
who went
side.
On to play, and Matt Stevens schools. Was there in 98, 99, 2000, and he goes on to play for England. He becomes a full international for England. Like Brad Barrett, a couple of years later, he plays for England, came out of Kearsley. So these would have all been guys that you were working with.
All right. So what happened with Matt? He was a year too old for his class. So he was still in grade 8, but he was big and he was fit and strong. So I wanted to play him first team. But he was like, I don't know how to work it for the Saffers, for the UK people. He would have been like about Form 3 for the UK guys. But he was under 16,
S3 in Scotland, yeah. S3, S4 in Scotland, yeah. Yeah.
So everybody panicked a bit, and his father, Russell, was a businessman. He took him off to the surgeon. They drew marrow and all the rest, and the surgeon said, no, he's fine. So he played, and that year, he played in the academy. I think he played academy year that year, under 18 age group, and he captained the Natal schools in the end. He was captain of the academy side that beat SA schools when he was 18 in that year. Wow. And then he went on to, he left school, and his father phoned me and said, hey, he hasn't got a contract. I said, what do you mean? So there was a guy at the NRU phone. He said, no, we don't have a contract. So I said, no, he hasn't got. I think it was Dave Goldhawk arranged him a trial at Bath. And he went across and then he made his name there. Unfortunately, they got the whole group, because I didn't get involved at the time, but Russell phoned me and said, what should we do? And I said, just own up, be brutally honest, take your punishment, your ban, but come back and you must prove a point and come back and play again. And he did. He got chosen for a third British Lions rugby tour to Australia. He was by that stage not the first choice tight head prop, but he could play both sides. So he went on the third British Lions tour, but he played in the World Cup final for England against South Africa. And Bucky's Botha switched sides with Matfield in the lock and was punching the hell out of his eyes underneath the scrum, which was never picked up. And Matt had a go off, had stitches, got taped up, came back, and Bucky's did the same again. He thought it was quite fun and a joke. I didn't. Thought it was disgusting, but anyway.
That's really interesting to hear that you're talking on behalf of an England front row forward there who's a Kearsley old boy that you taught, and he's getting beaten up by a South African prop. That you can hear the mixed kind of sentiment there between the two teams for you. Kevin, I tell you what, we could go on for several hours. I'm absolutely sure about that. Time is not our friend if we want people to actually listen to this. So we want to try and keep it kind of reasonably manageable. So let's quickly use that as a link, because I'm really keen to just almost finish with. We could talk about that forever, but we'll move on because I need to talk about. I want to talk about South Africa schools. So we've got this Craven Week, Natal, blah blah blah. All the provincials bring their school teams, which are an amalgam of the best players from the best schools, and then you have Craven Week, and then you become a South African schools selector for 9 years. So, what years was that? And just tell us what that was about, or what that was like, and who you saw, because you must have seen all of the biggest names that go on to play at the highest level in the Springboks coming through at school level when you're a selector for SA schools.
Okay, so we go to the end part. SA schools was 2005 to 2013. Was 9 years, I think. So I was selected there.
I was looking at the list earlier. Sia Khaleesi plays South African schools in 2009, 2010, somewhere around there. So no, you're a selector at this time.
We didn't select him. He selected himself. I mean, that year he was so outstanding. He ran through everybody. He tackled everybody. He was like just a first-team player, a Craven player playing against the school second team. He was just outstandanding. He just stood out. I mean, we didn't select him. He selected himself.
Yeah, he was just straight in bang. Everybody. Yeah. No, sorry, I interrupted. So 9 years of SA schools. You must have seen some things. It must have been a hell of an experience.
Yes, yeah, it was. I think, and I might sound a bit what's called vindicated here, but I think Skonk Nicholson and myself, Skonk from Maritzburg College, are the only English-speaking guys ever voted onto that selection panel. A lot of it was obviously Afrikaans, and a lot of Afrikaans coloured guys from the Cape. So it was quite an honor doing that. I started 95 was my first year coaching the Natal school side, and I think that's where I got my nickname SS from. SS can also mean shark shit because it's the bottom of the ocean. Nothing can go further down than shark shit. So what happened there is I was due to be assistant coach, but the coach had a cancer problem and he couldn't get to Craven Week, so I had to take over. And then they sent a guy from England, from the NRU, who then wanted to change. He just arrived and wanted to change all the patterns. He wanted to maul, and we were taking the ball to ruck, to hard ground. We were playing Free State main game in the Free State Stadium in Bloemfontein, 1995. And so there was a big disagreement, and we didn't win the game. We lost 2, and we drew 1 at the end, but it was a catastrophe. And I know what SS means. I know what it's like to feel like shark shit at the bottom of the ocean. But anyway, we went back, had a meeting, and I said what the hell was going on. And then 96, they made me head coach. I went to Stellenbosch, Kutzenberg, back to an area which I'd played in 73, so I knew that. And we had a fantastic year. The guy called Rich Kelly from Maritzburg College was a tight head prop, and I made him captain the year before because he was in that 95 side as a reserve. I think he's still prop, but he was a character and an unbelievable motivator. He's a great player. And we scraped through. We beat Transvaal, which is now the Lions, 18-3. And then we scraped through 2 points against Vaal Triangle in Eastern Province. They had an unbelievable flanker that year as well. He bit the hell out of my players' forearms trying to get to the board to jackal. But anyway, we won all 3 out of 3. And then the next year we had Kimberley, and we played. Then they asked us, please, can we have an NRU guy? So I said, well, who? You got to tell us who. Another guy called Swace the Brain. He's now coaching the Springbok ladies side. And we knew him from schoolboy size. I knew him quite well. He had his kids through Kersney, so I knew him personally. So I said, no, he's fine. And we got on very well. And again, we won 3 out of 3 at the Kimberley Craven Week in 97. Then 98, we had an influx of players. I don't know what for. They started to do post-matric at Michaelhouse from the Free State. And these were really talented players. When we did the drill skills and the warm-up, I thought, yes, as we won 6 out of 6, this is going to be easy. And then you begin to know SS again, China. Back to the drawing board. We lost. We won 1. But what happens there, you learn things at our level 3 rugby coaching thing. Jan Nel was my assistant coach. And he said, a lot of coaching in Afrikaans is done by family, not by the coach. I said, what are you talking about? He said, no, the father and the son.
Father, yeah.
I'll give you an example now of Steph du Toit. So we had Craven Week that year. He played for Boland in his year. You'll all know Steph du Toit played. He got man of the World Rugby Series, whatever.
Yeah. More than once, World Player of the Year, more than once,
Yeah, and then Hans Struber.
Peter Steph du Toit, yeah.
Correct. And then Hans Struber is scouting for Natal, for the under-20s and provincial. And he comes to me, I'm selecting. SA schools. This guy, Detroit from Boland, he's a lock. Have you got him down? I said, no, he's like about 5 or 6. He said, no, he's going to give him a bursary to come. I said, on the play, yeah. He's good, but he's not that good. He said, no, his grandfather was a Springbok. He'll come through. And that whole thing about the family, the penny dropped to me then. And Steph Detroit came to Natal for a while. I don't know, he's gone back to Western Province. But I mean, he was so right that guy from being, he'd never made SA schools, but he was quite good at Cravenweek. You know, he stood out, but nothing dominant. But he ends up playing for the Springboks in the way he played for the Springboks. And a lot of that is father to son.
And I noticed that I was reading Rassie Erasmus's book recently, and obviously Rassie's own playing career is a story in itself. Although he's more famous for what he's done as the main team coach, but his whole family. I'm trying to remember where he grew up now. It's down in the Eastern Cape, I think. And he just trying to remember the name of the town he lived in, but the whole town was just completely rugby. And I think Danny Gerber was from there, as a kind of someone he kind of followed, and it was all family. It was all family, and it was all just fathers and brothers and other players helping each other just develop, because it was just such a huge part of their culture.
Yeah, definitely. Dispatch, Donny Gerber, Rassie was down that way. Eastern Province, that elusive prop, Frans Erasmus. They produced some great players over the years. Kevin Cowley. So
SA schools. Let's finish up with. I was looking at the list of names, and I'm back to the Scotland perspective here. I've bumped into and kind of had a occasional kind of short chat with two South African Scots players. There's also, I haven't actually met him yet, but I'm hoping to bump into Dylan Richardson, who's a Kersney old boy, who's now in the Scotland setup. But Piers Skuman and Duan van der Merwe, obviously quite well known here in Scotland for doing their bits for the Scotland rugby team. But I saw them in the South African schools breakdown around about 2011, 2012, 2013, somewhere around there. Were you part of it at that point? Do you remember them?
Yes, very well. Duan van der Merwe was a bit like Khaleesi. He selected himself. He's playing for Southwest Districts, and he just stood out. He was
at school in Outeniqua. Outeniqua was, yeah.
He made Carl du Plessis look quite ordinary when he was at Cravenweek. His inside, outside, he just ran through people on that left wing. They just bashed a couple of times, gave it to him, and stood back and watched. And he just glided through opposition like anything. So he was a real standout at Cravenweek. He selected himself left wing for SA schools.
And Piers Skuman, do you remember him?
Yes, I remember him. I was doing the back line. So what happens there, you get each guy nominates a position. I was with centres and back line. But I remember him coming up. I didn't do the forward. So if I agreed on what they said, and the SA school selectors, you don't get there by chance. You've got to know what you're talking about. So, yeah, I remember him, but I didn't have a lot to do with that selection. But Van der Merwe, I did.
Yeah, and then were you at Kersney still when Dylan Richardson came through?
Correct, yeah. But I finished basically teaching. I taught him, I tried to teach him geography, but he wasn't an academic, let me put it that way. But he was a good rugby player coming through. I'd finished first team Natal schools. I was still SA school selector and on the Natal schools executive, but I'd had my tenureships of Natal schools coaching and of Kersney first team.
Yeah, and he played South African schools. He got into the SA schools side, didn't he? I saw his name on the list. Or was it the A side? SA schools A. There's an A squad.
I think he got into the A side, yeah.
Yeah, the A squad, which is like the second team for SA schools. Yeah. And now he's played a few times for Scotland. He's in the Edinburgh setup, and I guess he could still kind of get it together and maybe get a few more Scotland runouts.
A penny's just dropped on my head because we go back to talking Scotland and Matt Stevens, England. Brad Barrett was another one.
I mentioned him.
Also a Zimbabwean Rhodesian. He was just a bit behind me at Cravenweek, 1 year behind. I think he would have played 75, 76 Cravenweek. He was a big, strong. He's either tight head, prop, or lock. But his wife and Brad's mother is a short little lady. Would have gone just above his elbow to his. So it's like Robert Dupree and his son, because Robert Dupree's a scrum half.
I was just about to mention. I was going to go to the Dupree's.
He's not a scrum half. He's the centre, or now he's captaining Sale Sharks still at centre. I said he's the centre. If he learned to kick, he'd be a good fly off. But
So
anyway,
Brad Barrett is a
Barrett,
Kearney kind of player. He comes in and he ends up in the centre for England for a number of matches.
so what happened there, he came out of the under 13, 14, 15 level, and he had played hooker. So he played Natal schools, Craven Week at the primary schools. Then he came to me and said, "Hey, sir, this front row is harder." I said, "Well, what do you want to play?" He said, "No, maybe flank or something." So I said, "Well, let's do the drill schools and see." And he had ball handling skills. It stood out easy. He said, "No, listen, you're going to change. We put you to centre straight." So he moved him from number 2 to number 12 when he was 16. And he went from there. He played Natal schools 12 with Waylon Murray, played Springbok Sevens from Westville at number 13. Then he came to Natal, played for Natal for a while. Dick Muir played him at fly-half for Natal for a year or so. And then Francis Steyn came from the Free State, and he lost his number 12 jersey and he went to England. And then him and Matt both played for England together. They played against Scotland in the Calcutta Cup. I think they won it. So they played together for a year.
Scotland can beat England easily these days. We do it all the time. But back in those days, we were getting absolutely hammered.
Well, they had well-played coach players from Kearney.
Exactly. And that reminds me, there's a great joke. If England back in those days with Matt and Brad and Ireland or Scotland are playing each other, what I'm often seeing on my WhatsApp messages is our South Africans are better than your South Africans, so we're going to win this match. So yeah, there we go. That's the influence of the South African players right throughout the Six Nations, maybe apart from France, is been quite something. But let's finish with the Dupree brothers and the father. So their father's, I don't think he was a Kearney, but the father's a Springbok. And then there's three brothers, an older brother and two twins, but they all come through and they're all still playing now, big names.
Yeah, the two twins were just phenomenal. What happened there, they were still under 16 and they went to Craven. Now they banned it. You can't play 2 years out of your age group. But the convener of selector, the South African Springbok convener of selectors came to me and said, "Hey, what is this 16-year-olds you got on your side there? See, they come from Kearney, where you are." I said, "Have you seen them play yet?" He said, "No, I call them Pete." So I said, "No." I said, "Listen, they're Robert Dupree's sons, Robert Dupree's boys." "Ah, just reg, is that right?" I said, "Yeah." When they played as 16-year-olds in Craven Week, they were so physical, they dominated the 18-year-olds. So the two of them, Daniel and Jean-Luc, they played. Robert was finally moved to fly off, and so he played Craven Week fly, but I don't think he played SA schools. I think we ranked him about number 3 or 4 because he couldn't kick. He didn't kick well for posts and that as a fly off. But he's lasted long. I mean, he's still playing, captaining Sales Sharks. I think he said they finished at the end of the year, I think.
Yeah, I mean, they've been on and off, and I think the international thing has been very, very close, and they got a few caps between them. But I think at one point that all three of them are in the Sales Sharks team together.
Correct.
If I remember. Yeah.
What happens there is that, again, the mother story comes into the side of it. Their mother had a previous marriage, and she had a son, MG Nel, played at a small Afrikaans school, Durban North, Afrikaans High Durban North. And he made our Natal school side back in 1997, MG Nel, and we were playing Boland. And Boland had a hell of a quick wing. What was his name? Wasn't Jankies, but he was blitz. He was a hell of a fast. And I said to MG, come here. This little Okie here, we're playing in the mud as well. You can't let him have half a meter. You've got to tackle him before he gets the ball even. You can't let him go. And we won the game. I think it was 11-6. But MG Nel ankle tapped him, and he was away going to score because MG Nel was also quick. But the point I'm trying to make is that Sonia is the mother's name of the three Dupree boys. But she had a marriage before, and MG Nel also played Natal schools. So when the guys always go along with the father, son, they've got to look at the mother as well. Brad Barrett's mother's 5'3" high. Sonia Dupree, as her son from the previous marriage, was also in Natal schools. An excellent
So she has
player.
She has 4 sons.
Yeah, but she was also a Springbok netball player. Or she was a Springbok in her own right.
Wow.
No, it's in the genes. It's in the family.
Absolutely.
So when you mix that with Robert Dupree and you get these 16-year-olds coming to Craven Week and bullying the 18-year-olds.
They produce twins. Yeah.
I used to have to invigilate them on a Saturday morning in cycle tests. They're unplayable. They weren't academics, that's for sure. I had to put them in the front row, one extreme on my left and one extreme on my right. Otherwise, they're into each other. 10 minutes of writing the exam, they'd finished. Now they want to go and play rugby.
They've done all right so far, and I'm sure they're going to do brilliantly from here on.
They've made a laugh. They've made lots of money.
Yeah. Kevin, I am going to end it here because otherwise it's going to go forever. Thank you so much
Okay.
for coming on.
My
This
pleasure. I hope
we
it makes
could.
sense to everybody.
I've loved it, so I hope others will too. So, thank you so much for your time. Stay on the line, and I really appreciate you coming on and helping us with this. So, thanks very much indeed.
Not your pleasure. Thanks, Jim.